It is January the 31st. Oh my goodness. 2016. I'm Dana Durnford, also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org, and you can find these videos at livestream.com. And we are on a winter schedule. We would call it a nuclear PR firm schedule because we fly by their schedule for the last couple of months. And we have a really good stream for everyone tonight. A whole bunch of fun, I hope. Top 10 nuclear. And so we are not going to waste any time, because otherwise I'll forget what I'm doing. And to everybody joining the stream out there right now.
What's up? What's up, everybody? What's up?
Yeah, what's up? This is right. And number 10 live streaming here tonight. I always gets a little confused. Good night, everybody. Let me get that set up, and this set up, and those set up, and get rid of that. Ding that. Alright, number 10 is rockin'.
Starting at tip number 10, never cross the road without looking both ways around a nuclear power plant, because most nuclear scientists are very nearsighted.
That's a pretty good tip, you ask me, because we know that nuclear scientists are busy thinking about their next project, and besides the fact they're all nearsighted, that's the only way apparently you can get into the institutions to take a degree. I'm not making it up. And tip number 9.
Tip number 9. If you're being berated by a nuclear scientist, the best thing to do is grovel and pander and slowly back away. Do not make eye contact.
Right, and that one is very important. So I like to think, pretend you're playing hockey, right? And so look, keep, like you're shifting gears, or maybe, or just pretend you're doing something else. That way they don't really pay attention to you. I smurfed that up. Let's get into tip number 8.
Tip number 8. Do not make contact. And you won't have to worry about nuclear scientists eating your children.
I couldn't resist that one, of course. Tip number 7. I forgot to put that in there. I should announce him because the little guy.
If you're walking down the road and you see a nuclear scientist on the same side, it's best to cross the street, go into a building, even though you don't know what the building is for, or C, lie down on the ground, curl up, suck your thumb, and put your other one up your butt.
That's my
favorite. Hope that they don't molest you.
That's my personal favorite one. Put one thumb in your mouth, one up your butt, curl up, and there's a good chance, a little bit of echo there, there's a good chance they won't molest you or your children. So teach your children to do that.
Tip number 7. If a nuclear scientist comes to your home and wants to eat one of your children, give them the biggest one. That way you'll have time to escape.
Right, and you got a little bit more time to gather up your belongings. Like, get a pillowcase and throw your belongings in that while he's eating the fat child, or the tall one, the bigger one. And, younger kids won't be traumatized. They'll kind of forget it when they get older. And so that's a pretty good tip of the day. Tip number 6.
Tip number 6. If you're in a restaurant and you see a nuclear scientist with his wife having a meal, offer to pay for it. That way it's less likely he'll beat his wife that night when he goes home.
Right. And then she won't be nagging on him for a couple of days, because she'll be like, I think he likes me. He didn't beat me last night. And then he might not make as many mistakes at work that next couple of days, right? And that's a good thing for society. And they need a break too. So, tip number 5.
Number 5. If your child would lose their baseball by accident into a nuclear scientist's garden, you can try going over and giving $1,000 and promising him it will never happen again.
Right. See, that one usually works only once, though. Right? And so if you're going to move out of the neighborhood, is probably the next step. You should rent a place, and then when he's at work, have the moving truck company come in and move stuff. That way he doesn't come over and beat you up and eat your children, right?
Okay, tip number 4. Number 4, tip of the day. If a nuclear scientist, and you accidentally catch him stealing your morning newspaper and he's embarrassed, offer him your wife. Yeah, see, that's the old bait and switch routine. This gives you the time to run out the back door screaming, and alert the other neighbors to stay inside while he's doing those things to your wife, right? She doesn't mind. I mean, it's better than him eating, the nuclear scientist eating her children, right? So, tip number 3. 3 of the day. Say a nuclear scientist is drunk and insists on driving, and the police pull you over. You can tell the police that you kidnapped him and made him drive. That way, the police officer will arrest you instead of him, and he won't be angry at you for not saying you kidnapped him. Now, see, there's some real true brilliance in that one. Everybody, you got to teach your friends about that one, because that could happen to you, and then, that's not a good outcome if it goes bad, right? These are powerful people. I mean, they can do whatever they want. So, tip 2 of the day. If you have to share a taxi with a nuclear scientist, it's best to fake stomach cramps and let him go away by himself. That way he does not smell your fear and he won't come by and eat your children later. And you should throw all your clothing in the garbage after that one, because there's so much fear. You can't wash that out really easy. And then, he might drive down the road, he'll smell that fear. So, and it'll rub off on your pets and your family too. I had to keep a straight face. Tip number 1. Number 1, tip of the day for nuclear scientists living in your neighborhood is, if your dog should accidentally poo on a nuclear scientist's garden, you can run over, put your face in the poo, rub it all over the place, and then put those pictures up on Facebook, and the nuclear scientist can show his friends what his new pet neighbor is really good for. Woo! We like it. That's the top 10 tips of the day. Fukushima had a 9.0 earthquake. Now, this earthquake was 7,000 times worse than the Christchurch. It was 1,000 times worse than Haiti. It shook the entire country for 6 minutes. Think about that in the context of you're talking 1, 2, 3 G forces. 1 G, you can't even stand up. We've seen people sitting down in Tokyo. We've seen all the buildings. I mean, the earthquake was also felt in Florida about 30 minutes later. This is very fast moving. It's going through the country at 9,000 miles per hour. It spawned a massive, inconceivable, unbelievable, hideous, destructively powerful, that wiped out around 400 kilometers of the coastline of Japan. This tsunami killed people throughout the country, and I can show you a quick doodaddy there if you like. And so 15 reactors, that's just another quick note for everybody. And I'll just show you a map of the tsunami damage through the coastline. First I can show you the reactors. So the east coast was where the tsunami struck, and the continental shelf was about 180 miles wide where it snapped off. So it created this massive, inconceivable tsunami that killed about 100,000 birds in Alaska that were beaching just above the low tide line. So the tsunami was felt throughout the Pacific Rim nations. This was a very powerful one. I forgot what I was trying to do there. And we have now you can also see how the tsunami reached the east side. Now that's the east side right there, the yellow. See how it reached all the way up into that orange, of course, because the tsunami killed birds in Alaska too. So, but it done a lot of damage. The red was 3 meters or higher. Okay. So what I want to show you next. Now this one here is where people have died along the coastline during the tsunami, right? Now you remember that map I was showing you of the nuclear power plants? And so this tsunami, it caused meltdowns that we know about. Now, I just showed you a headline of 15 power plants couldn't go into cold shutdown because the tsunami had come through that area. And what did that look like? Well, it would look like that. And think about how 4 buildings I'm going to show you coming up created 9 million one-ton bags. And so here's the buildings. This is Unit 1. It was 100% meltdown, a melt-through, and a melt-out. Unit 2 was 100% meltdown, melt-through, melt-out. And in comparison, Chernobyl was a candlestick to any of those 2 buildings. Unit 3 was 2 million times worse than those buildings. 2 million times worse. And so it's worse than all the nuclear power plants on the planet combined, and that it's still unhinged in Japan 5 years later. This is Unit 4. This was the one that come out and told you that they were taking the fuel out of the pool, right, for 18 months. They were telling you that story, and they were showing you those pictures. But when you look at the picture of the building, you realize that they lied to you. The roof of that is not going to be inside of that, okay? And that they tore everything off, including the reactor and the fuel pools. Yet they come out and told you. So you got to watch the media. They're pretty tricky. They're pretty gnarly, and they don't like to tell the truth. And that, of course, the tsunami ran throughout the country. And so we got some headlines I haven't got around to covering. We're going to start running through here tonight. The Daily Show is going nuclear. It was March the 12th, 2012. And so what they did, I'm going to show you tonight is a little bit of propaganda, how the propaganda machine works for the nuclear industry, and why it's important that you understand that. The Daily Show is going nuclear. Okay, Dana, you showed us that. The nuclear institution, so the nuclear industry has infiltrated everything. Hollywood is you can't get a show at a Hollywood without nuclear in it somewhere. Without them talking about nuclear saving mankind somewhere. Even if it's just a blurb on the TV in the movie, you'll hear it. There's a nuclear war, nuclear this, nuclear that. And so it's designed to infiltrate every aspect of you and your loved ones' lives. Michael Moore, thank you so much for making pro-nuclear movie. Michael Moore. And so this was really interesting, where he sat on stage with Pandora's Promise's director Robert Stone. And so Robert Stone had made Pandora Promise for CNN, and Robert is a crazy man who says that all radiations are like a banana, but that's homeostasis. And what that means is your body regulates normal radiation like a banana. And so you can't get any more, which is potassium-40, you can't get any more in your body than is already there. And everything you consume has some kind of potassium, or some trace of potassium-40 into it usually. And so your body's constantly equalizing it. That's known as homeostasis. And homeostasis is where the scientists claim man-made radiation is good for you. But what it is, homeostasis is natural radiation, like potassium-40, but it's not really radiation. It's not really an emitter, but we call it an emitter. Its lifespan is 1/10,000th of a second. You're not going to mutate a fruit fly, and certainly not going to harm you or anyone else. You are acclimated to that kind of radiation that's natural. There's about 160 of them. You're on this planet in the solar system that we recognize. And now we add electrons onto these elements in one sense, but also we create all the elements from uranium. And so there's a fine line here where they talk about the natural element on purpose. They name the other ones the same, but they created all of these by adding neutrons and electrons, creating electrons, and creating their own element from uranium and plutonium. The minute you added something else into the mix, you really changed the concoction dramatically. And so the stuff that is coming through a chain reaction is different from everything else in the solar system, and we've actually created an extra 10,000 isotopes that are classified. Who knows what China or Japan or any other countries does, but North America has around 10,000 classified. And they don't want the other countries to know what they're up to, and you can tell what they're up to by the isotopes they're creating, or how good they are, or blah, blah, blah. Who knows, right? What they're really up to. Most likely, let me keep going, but that's important because that's what the stuff we talk about as a dirty bomb. That is the stuff we talk about for nuclear waste. And so the reason we talk about that stuff for nuclear waste and we don't put bananas on a nuclear waste site, or potato chips, or sunshine on a nuclear waste site, is because that is natural. It's irrelevant. It's harmless. It's indigenous, stupid, everyday background emitters. It's not really radiation. not like something that's coming out of a nuclear reactor. Everything that comes out of a nuclear reactor, bar nothing, is a dirty bomb. See? Everything that's on a nuclear site is cross-contaminated in each other. And when you put all this stuff in a fuel pool surrounded by water after a chain reaction for decades, you created this witch's brew that don't exist in our solar system, and that we recognize it as being very harmful. Let me get back on track to the headlines. CNN Huffington Post lists as an external stakeholder in the NRC alongside the nuclear industry and pro-nuclear blogs. And both outlets help the NRC to increase online influence as CNN produces pro-nuclear infomercials. And that was Pandora's Promise, was an infomercial, a commercial. And so Robert Stone is a well-known shill for the industry is what I'm basically trying to tell you. CNN, they're talking about that one again now. Actually, an infomercial is dishonest to its core. I got screwed up teeth, so I'm going to slur some words. Watch plutonium MOX fuel ad to the air during the daily show. MOX fuel, mixed oxide fuel. This is stuff that's reclaimed from I always say that. I don't know why I say that. It's kind of like a goldsmith or something. It's trying to put it in layman's terms. But anyway, they reclaim plutonium and uranium from missiles that were sitting in silos for decades. Now, this stuff has already gone through a chain reaction and is extremely dangerous. It's 2 million times more dangerous. But now, when you put it through a chain reaction again, it's 2 million times again. So multiply 2 million times 2 million. But when you threw plutonium into it, now, this is scientists' guesstimates. They got their little calculators. Anyway, giggity, oh my goodness. But what they're claiming is that they can burn it off. Now, this stuff, if it lets loose, can burn up to 200,000 degrees hotter, the plutonium in particular. So that's why they're going down with a big bang. And they atomize and aerosol everything. It's extremely scary that this could happen, has happened like Unit 3 in Fukushima. But anyway, Japan has started another reactor on the west side, the opposite side of where the tsunami struck. And which is what I predict they were going to do anyway, because the other side got pounded with that tsunami like we were talking about earlier. Let's keep going and run through some of these headlines. And so they're pumping mixed oxide, even though Japan's reactors had just killed the Pacific. They knew about it. We were learning about it at this stage, 2013. We were going down the rabbit hole. There was many people out there trying to work out what the hell this was going to do. And so over the last 5 years, we got a lot of data from all kinds of venues and all kinds of people. And so that's the big thing about us, is we can focus in on nuances and the minutiae that we can recognize in our own lives, and we can categorize that and share that. And that's, all the scientists is doing. They're observing, recording and reporting. And so anybody can do this. You just got to be honest about it, and you got to be authentic about it, and you got to try to provide as much authentication. But if it gets published in a journal, no one will ever get to read it. It's locked up behind the paywalls of Springer and Wiley forever. And so what's the sense of publishing anything? Why bother? Just put it out there on the internet. Okay, let me keep going. The Daily Show is going nuclear. We'll use program for ad campaign. So they got 20 writers for the Daily Show when it was running, creating all these jokes, sucking all these people in, bringing in all these live audiences. They were given huge amounts of money to keep plugging this stuff out there. They didn't need the money. And we don't need nuclear. We've killed the Pacific Ocean. And I'll show you a little bit later about that if you like. You want to hang around. We've done 15,000 miles of the coastline, so we're not just the average people. We went out and researched the coastline for 260 days. You can find that up at the nuclearproctologist.org. So let's keep going on some of these headlines before we switch gear again. A phenomenal story. So they get all the breaks, they get all the headlines.
And it's obviously these people have really went down the rabbit hole and decided to be evil as you can be. And so we're glad to see that finally done with and gone, and these people disbanded and thrown away like they deserve to be. Huffington Post. Oh yeah, that was the Huffington Post. So internal stakeholders, external. Huffington Post, nuclear writer was another major one. CNN News. These are people with atomic shares in shareholders in stakes, corporate personhood, right? Making money off it. That's why they're pushing it so freaking hard. That's why they're making these disgusting, disgusting Pandora promise. That is the most disgusting lie. It's criminal. It's criminal. It's pure propaganda. It's 1940 techniques, and it's in your face, over the top nonsense. Pure propaganda. Anybody who watches that and then they come away feeling all good about themselves, thought they learned something, turns out they were turned into an idiot. It's a slap in your face. But all the stakeholders, that's media, social medias, Nuclear Energy Institute, yes, Vermont, Yankee, and the blogger himself, right? Idaho's Power Review. So you got all these people, U.S. government, U.S. Senate staff, United States Computer Emergency Readiness Teams. And so the very people that's charged with protecting you are the people that are put up on a pedestal because they'll tell you nothing but lies and manipulate you, and they'll inbreed their own little children to do the same thing after they're gone, to get the same jobs. Oh yeah, no, his daddy was a good man. No, he was a big stakeholder in the nuclear industry. Nuclear plant produced snow in Pennsylvania. This one is really important, probably the most important one we're going to talk about forever. I've never seen this particular phenomenon observed before. Okay, what is it, Dana? Nuclear plant produced snow. I'm going to show you some really interesting stuff we're going to talk about coming up. Check out the band of snow I'm going to show you coming up, being generated by the Beaver Valley nuclear plant. Up to an inch of snow had fallen as a result of the steam billowing from the stacks. Up to an inch of snow. Now this is radiation. This is pure radiation. So a nuclear plant, and I'm going to show you, let's jump onto another one I want to show you. Okay. So you see that big straight line right here? That's about a 30-mile line. She's a pretty one. You don't see too many like her. No two nuclear power snowstorms are alike. But they're all kind of, like, they're close, but, you know, but you can't get them exactly alike because there could be different winds, you know, right? Pay attention. I'm trying to teach you something here. It could be mountains or something. Dina. Just frigging with you, okay? All right, hang on. Now, so, that same band would exist if it wasn't snowing. Ah. Ooh. Now, a nuclear power plant, we know, like we talk about one in particular, it was on a river. It was sucking in 2.2 billion gallons a day. Every day. For all its reactors. 2.2 billion gallons. And it wanted an extra 14 million gallons for something else. And it made it into the paper. Now, the problem it was having getting 14 million more gallons was that at the 2.2 billion gallons a day it went through, think about how much water that is, just conceive how much eggs and larvae and small fries were in that. Okay, hang on. Here's for the punchline. Out of the 2.2 billion gallons a day, 145 million went back into the river. The rest of it went up the stack, and that's why you see these snowstorms and these freaks, inversions, right? Where there's not snow or something else obscuring it everywhere else. But it's going on all the time if you can follow the vapor. Like these stacks are, and so the fuel pools are vented out at the same time, 120,000 liters a day, and the fuel pool is full of, oh, I don't know, man-made rods that already went through a chain reaction. And we're talking about millions of pounds. We're talking with hundreds of millions of microscopic cracks in it, and that the stuff that's got to come out of their cracks that we're talking about, microscopic cracks,
We're talking about atoms. We're talking about the isotopes in the atoms coming out of these cracks at phenomenal rates, because that's what they do. They're producing atoms. They're splitting the atoms even though they're in the fuel pool. And so all of that is boiling off into the community because it's very hot, and you have to do that for a couple of decades. And so at any given time, even if you shut down a nuclear power plant, all the fuel pools are boiling off in your community for the next 10 to 20 years. You can shut down all the nuclear power plants right now, but the fuel pools will boil off in your community for decades. You can't change that. You can't just take it out and put it in some magic thing, because the noble gas will cause it to detonate. If any oxygen leaks in there, the oxygen will cause it to blow up. But anyway, so the study's showing that children have a 20% more likelihood of getting cancer if they live within 15 miles. Should be extended out to 30, but they didn't. That was the study in the 15-mile zone. And then are 20% more likely to get cancers, leukemias, vicious leukemias too. And we know that the young of animals and everything else are highly susceptible to radiation as they're developing. We know children are affected 10 times more quickly and more harmful than an adult getting the same dose. We know that children, after 10 becquerels a kilogram in their food, you see lesions in their organs. And after 50, you see lesions in adults' organs, and this stuff affects your heart right away too. But I mean, before cancer shows up, there's 1,800 autoimmune deficiencies like Alzheimer's and dementia, diabetes, and passing autism onto your children. And the Zika virus is designed to cover up all the abnormalities from the pregnant women, and also to bring in a police state at the same time. They're going for broke, obviously. And so Zika, the biggest harm about Zika is if you're pregnant. You have a baby that would look like like a baby would look like from depleted uranium, like the babies from Fallujah. Look up the babies from Fallujah, where 84% of the women were having deformed babies, like pointy heads and weird deformities. That's exactly what Zika is doing, apparently, right? So they roll that out to try to brainwash people, because we've seen that spiking now, these abnormalities in women and animals too, of course. And even whales, like 2 whales joined together, being born and washing up on the beach. And all the species are dying throughout the coastline. Let's keep going. So 30-mile long cloud went over Pittsburgh, right over Pittsburgh. But what it's showing you is that it's always going over Pittsburgh if the wind is blowing that way. And that all nuclear plants work under that same principle that we were just talking about. We're sucking up a couple of billion gallons a day, and a couple of, 150 million maybe goes back into the ocean or the river. But remember that a glass of salt water used to have 1 billion creatures in it, and 75 to 100 million of that was phytoplankton, the base of the food chain, the oxygen, the carbon sequestering chain. So imagine 2 billion gallons a day being sucked out of the ocean, just a single plant. And that's divide that by 16 and multiply it by 1 billion. And nuclear is carbon free. Nuclear is too cheap to meter. And created chaos. Created 9 million bags from 4 buildings. 9 million bags from 4 buildings. And it ain't stopped yet. It ain't like they cleaned everything up either. And they're not talking about the nuclear site. They're talking out in the communities. You would fill up billions and billions of bags, and it still won't stop. We've never seen anything like this in our life. There is no literature on for completely demolished reactors that have lost their inventories and lost their fuel pools, which are all the reactor cores. Every 2 years goes up on the roof in the fuel pools. Why would you put a fuel pool on the roof? Why were you waiting for something to go wrong? What, all you need is one thing to go wrong, and it's an unbelievable event for this planet. Any of these plants ever went down with the fuel pools on the roof, or any of the fuel pools, it's like Chernobyl lasted 10 days. Chernobyl was equal to 400 Hiroshima bombs that consumed everything around it. But Chernobyl is a candlestick compared to any of the reactors at Japan.
particularly number 3, is 2 billion times worse than any other reactor on the planet. I say 2 million all the time, but it is 2 billion. Let's keep rocking and rolling. We'll finish this out. 6:32, just going to be a short stream tonight. I worked really hard to get this all working. I done a new green screen yesterday all day. Like an idiot, I didn't use a roller. And so I've been working all day trying to make that work so we can bring more entertainment, like the top 10 nuclear scientists tips of the day kind of scenarios. So it's a stupid amount of work what I do here, but so the night show is just a short show. And while we're at it, let me go and show you everybody that's not familiar. Very quick, touch bases, and that's coming. I'll get along. We're slowly getting everything. I'm getting to the point now where I'm able to put time in on these programs, but you know, you got to realize. So let's start off with this part here, very quick. Sea urchins. So I got that smurfed up. Sea urchins. So you can read, so far, urchin die-offs have been recorded at 4 spots along the coastline. This was April 2015 from National Geographic and Smithsonian. And what they had come out and talked about was the study shown 4 spots were missing sea urchins, or they're in big decline, and that the 5th spot off Baja, California was also missing it. And so the Guardian, Vidal had said back in 2006, many people have said this, but 2006 it was called Hell on Earth in Chernobyl. And Chernobyl, you read that third sentence, 400 Hiroshima bombs worth of radiation, because it was consuming everything. It was in a chain reaction for 10 days. But then it stopped and turned into an elephant foot. And Kofi Annan says there's 3 million children in permanent disabilities in Ukraine, and that there's over 1 million died from Chernobyl. Chernobyl was just lasted only 10 days. We got 4 full meltdowns in Japan, and the government claims none died, yet 7 people died on one street shopping over a couple of year period. 7 people on one street dropped dead. And we're talking about huge radiation doses that they were getting in these areas. Stupid. There was 4,800 employees from TEPCO have died. But Chernobyl, it's still, they plowed down the homes in the still evacuated area. Japan, they give you free homes if you're pregnant. So let's keep going anyway. Because I can get distracted, and I just want to cover the rest of this before we call it a night. But I just want to lay the groundwork. Okay, so 400 Hiroshima bombs in Fukushima will be equal under that standard, not counting the fuel pools, just counting 3 reactors, not counting number 4. And but Fukushima had a lot more fuel in each of the buildings than Chernobyl. A stupid amount more in every building than Chernobyl. But anyway, just on that model of Chernobyl, Fukushima is equal to about 500,000 bomb tests, or bomb detonations, Hiroshima bombs, say. Okay. So what we done was, we took this little dinky, a 24-foot Coast Guard Zodiac. It has a bulletproof bottom on it. It has a diesel stove on it. It has a Zodiac goes on the roof and an 8-horsepower kicker. It has all the equipment imaginable. It's a tiny operation, but it's fine. It's unbelievable. I couldn't be more prouder of everybody that we went out there safely and done this for 260 days. And we covered all the areas. You see the whole coastline of British Columbia, Canada, for 260 days, 15,000 miles, in that little Zodiac. And what we showed, instead of a beautiful, wonderful, every square millimeter jostling for life, and these pictures are from the same area pre-Fukushima, which is Queen Charlotte Islands, Haida-Gwaii, Louise Narrows. Now it looks like this. You would starve to death. And so the whole coastline has been decimated. And the interesting thing about this coastline was that there's some iconic pictures of the same spot coming up here.
was you would get 75 of these leatherback starfish, and there's 78 species. I counted 3 species over 260 days out of the water, the ocean at low tide, and that I got underwater footage of. Altogether was around 5 species out of the 78 species. Each species, like you can see here, the leatherbacks come in multiple colors, right? Just that one species. And all the species are like that, where they come in multiple colors. And there used to be 75 per square meter. It used to be 500 per square meter of the giant plume sea anemones. But there's 76 species of sea anemones on that coastline. They were all missing. And so normally it was a very, very visible, highly visible coastline, very rich. Now it's all missing. This is the same spot, and the whole coastline, you would starve to death. There's nothing to eat there. Instead of being rich and wonderful, it's completely naked. Instead of being just amazing and just being careful everywhere you tread, you couldn't care less. You just walk wherever you couldn't. There was nothing to slip on. There was no worry. And this is one of the most prized places in Canada, isolated. And yachts from all over the world and sailboats and people fly in from all over the planet. It's a favorite spot for the natives, Louise and Earls and the Haida Gwaii Islands, former Queen Charlotte. Now it's nothing there. In fact, the birds will starve on these shorelines. Right? I was able to go ashore there because those urchins are not there no more. Now, the time that I went there, these pictures, like I said, that bird that I shot, and this picture that I shot, these are all from the same spot. This is pre-Fukushima pictures. So naked now, like the moon, only scarier. So let's come back. Let's come back over. I just wanted to put that out there because we're doing a documentary on how the entire coastline has been just destroyed. So nuclear power snowstorms for 30 miles shows you in every sense of the word what these power plants can do, right? Or doing rather, all day long. Even though that's a prime example of it, and people say, oh, I've never seen anything like that. They don't understand what we just went through, how it sucks up 1 million gallons a minute for each of the reactors. And then it boils that, and that's released as steam. But it's mixed in with all the radioactive isotopes. Pretty slick how they poisoned us and how they done us in and how they killed this planet. I mean, it's the dirtiest, sneakiest thing that you can ever imagine. But that's the industry for you. And so, let me just cover this one really quick. See the tritium? 7,000 becquerels a liter. These studies are pre-Fukushima, and they show all around the world tritium at about 5 to 6, 7 becquerels per cubic meter, not liter, not 7,000 a liter, but cubic meter, 5 to 6,000. And all these different spots, 0.6 to 1.5 becquerels a liter, right? You can see it here, 0.7. Different studies showing you pre-Fukushima. Now look, after Fukushima, 7,000 becquerels a liter for Canadian drinking water standards. This was locked up and put on a drum until Fukushima. Now they dump it in the ocean. Now they want to dig it under the ocean, just bury it there, and they don't even care anymore. Now they got 9 million bags of it. They don't even know what to do with it. They got it leaching into the ocean, into the environment. It's all over the country. It's in all the trees. It's in all the pollen. It's in all the berries and the fruits. It's in all the mushrooms throughout the whole country. It's in all their water tables. There's stupid amount of radioactive materials, even from the mocks. They're done. Only the strong will survive. Only the ones that are chosen by the government and given the cures will survive. They're better off moving to Chernobyl. Right alongside the reactor. They can use the reactor as their group meeting. They're still better off than they are staying anywhere in Japan. And Japan is lying. The media is lying to everybody. And anybody that speaks out gets arrested or gets vilified and demonized in the media. Okay, let's say goodnight to everybody. And that's not how you say goodnight to everybody, do you not? You close it all down. You come over. You bring up the browser. Dana. Good night, Amthurst and John. Globe and Mail accused me of death threats. John, being arrested for death threats. I was arrested for criminal harassment and nuclear pukes. It's like a badge of honor. And they ain't got a leg to stand on. They know it, and it was desperation. And we talked about the court cases where they stalked me for 2 years. The University of Victoria in British Columbia, Canada, and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Saanich Police Department, Constable Steve Crooks, and also the FBI. These people stalked me for 2 years, tried to get me arrested repeatedly. It's in the disclosures. It's really shocking what they've done to me. And they dragged me into another jurisdiction where I have to get hotels, and you have to travel by ferry, and it's a living nightmare. Good night, everybody. Hugs, everybody. Terry Ann Jan Brooks. Hi, honey. That's Miss Milky the Clown one, folks. Candace, she posted a stupid amount of stuff on Fukushima. And good stuff, too. Well done. Julian, good night, everybody. Good night, Smarty. Kate, hi, Kate. And Kate got the Fukushima Hounds. And you'll find links at YouTube on My Beautiful Girl by Dana videos for most of these people that I don't even bother mentioning tonight, unfortunately. Joseph, France. Good night, everybody. And good night, Elaine. Good night. Joseph, Strontium Mike. Just cruising. Who else can I say? I'm not. I scream for you, scream. Albert. Let's see. Gary. Try to say hi to everybody before I say goodnight. Alex, thanks for all the music, my friend. We're in good shape now. You've done an incredible job. You wrote an amazing amount of music. And I appreciate it so, so much. And we're going to set you free to do your own thing. And if you want to share it with me, you go right ahead and share it with me. Don't worry about that. But I don't want to steal any more of your copyrighted material. I got too much of it now. Hi, Pam. Good night, everybody. I'm looking at your names instead of reading them. And I do that all the time. And it's shocking. But anyway, we are going to sign off. I'll re-upload a higher quality of the show tonight up to YouTube. And I'll edit out the top 10 one in a higher quality and post that maybe tomorrow too, just for a little blurb blurb up on the internet. And I enjoyed the stream tonight. I'm pretty worn out. But I mean, after redoing the green screen yesterday, obviously that pays off because I can pop me up and I fit right in without all the blah 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 and where it was really bad looking the last time. So I've been working hard because I want to do these shows, and it's going to take like 8 hours a day to do what I'm doing, but I'm feeling good about pushing with everything I got. I think that'll help me if I am really, really active. Good night, everybody. And we'll talk to you folks next chance we get. Take care, folks.